Welcome to The Commute, a Bible study podcast designed to turn your commute into an opportunity to grow in your faith. Whether you're sure of what you believe or you're not sure what to believe, this podcast is designed to help you better understand who Jesus is, what the Bible's all about, and how that applies to your life today. I'm your host, Pastor Matt, and I'm excited to dive into this week's episode of The Commute. Well, hey, welcome to The Commute. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kenzie.
And this week is actually, want to tee this up, this is actually our second to last episode of The Commute. And so we'll talk more on the last week if you're following The Commute as to why this is the second to last episode. But it's kind of crazy. We've been doing this for now three years, wow. Something like that. Maybe longer than that. Just before Pastor Casey came out, I actually recorded an entire season, just me. Wow. And then had a co-host and never looked back because love the co-host thing. So we'll be wrapping things up more, the whole commute series, top learnings and stuff like that next week. But this week we want to actually dig into Matthew. So you're going to be looking in Matthew 15 through 19, Acts 23 through 27, Ruth 4, Psalm 73 through 76, and then 1 Samuel 7 through 22. A few readings.
Just a couple.
But, the interesting thing is Matthew 18. So do you want to read for us Matthew 18, 1 through 9? And then we'll take some time to just break it down.
Absolutely. So Matthew 18, it says, "At that time the disciples who came to Jesus and asked, 'Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' He called a little child and had him stand among them, and he said, 'I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea.'"
I've always loved that last image. It's like, because you'll hear some people say, well, hey, they're going to do it anyways, so might as well be the one that, does it, whether you're talking about, some kind of sinful thing that people engage in. It's like, oh, it's not me, it's them, And Jesus is like, if it's you that's providing that opportunity, even though they're going to do it, it's like a millstone. Would be better if you'd have a millstone and be dropped into the sea.
Yeah.
That's like a powerful image.
A really powerful image.
But I love the image of faith like a child. And it's really interesting. Something I've been doing with our kids is we take the Jesus calling for kids is one of the things we'll use. And I like it because it shows a verse, gives a thought, and then we'll just take either some time at breakfast or some time at dinner, and we'll do the devotion of the day. And then I'll just kind of look at them and say, hey, what did you hear? What stuck out to you? That's kind of a way to do daily discipleship with them. It's cool to see their faith grow through that. But it was interesting because we had this one recently and my kids were like, oh, that's so cool. Jesus wants us to have faith like a kid, because everybody, everything's always about growing up. Oh, well, when I get bigger, I'll get to do this. When I get bigger, I'll get to do this. And as a kid, you don't always feel like you're perfectly primed for something, right? And here's Jesus saying, no, the way you live life as a child, that's the kind of faith I want you to bring to God. And so it kind of brings up the question, and you work with kids a lot.
I do.
What character traits of a child do you see that you think Jesus is trying to highlight here as he's talking about have faith like this?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like their fresh perspective on things. They always ask questions. They're always really curious. And they have such an excitement about really mundane things.
That's so true.
I've hung out with Claire in the nursery before, and you want to know what a highlight is? Going to the bathroom. They're like, "Can we go to the bathroom?" And I'm like, "Do you need to go to the bathroom?" And they're like, "No, but can we go?" Sure.
It's like that sense of freedom, right?
Yeah.
We can go.
Yeah. They just ask questions. They ask really good questions most of the time.
Yeah, I love the questions my kids will ask. It's sometimes they have a way of getting to the heart of something, but just the fact that they're always willing to ask questions and they want to know about the world. I think that's a huge aspect in faith. I think I don't know what that turn point is, but a lot of times when it comes to faith, we think as adults that faith is about having it figured out. Maybe it's because we had to walk through confirmation, and maybe it's because, and then we hit this point where we're afraid to let people know we have questions. But, a big part, as you're saying, of being a child is just inquisitive nature. And like, it's okay in faith to have questions. In fact, it's a good thing to have questions. When you think about God, God is so much bigger than we are. I mean, you're talking about a being that literally created everything, redeemed everything. The only thing in creation that is never surprised. You get that? Like, God is never surprised because he sees yesterday, today, and tomorrow as if they're all just one thing, And so you've got this being that's like so far beyond what we can understand. So to think that we would have questions about what God's doing, about how the world's operating, and that we bring those questions to God seems kind of normal when you think about who God is. And so I think that's a huge aspect of faith like a child, is being willing to bring those questions in.
Absolutely. I also think of like innocence, when I work with kids throughout the week, I'm like prepping our activities, whatever, putting a lot of thought into it. And then on a Sunday morning in kids' church, or when I pop into the nursery, or when I go to youth group, they just ask such thoughtful things, or they just take all of this worry that I have about how this event is going to turn out. And it's just we're just here. We're just talking. It's very simple. It's very it's just not complicated. They think in such a, I don't want to say basic way, but just so much more joyful, lighthearted. Yeah. They don't get so weighed down by all the details. And I'm always don't ever lose that.
Well, and I think probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me about kids, and this is, maybe this is at the heart of what Jesus was talking about. I think all those aspects are definitely aspects of what he's talking about. But kids, more than anything else, have such a high level of trust. Mm-hmm. When they know their parents are in the room, there's just this incredible trust that comes with it. So even if they're afraid about something. I recently had to take Reese for his second shot for, COVID stuff. And we found out he was getting 2 shots and not 1. It was like, what? And just the dread, the terror on his face from having to do the shot, but the fact that I was in the room, and I was holding him, and we were able to get through it together. He had this big trust that even though he didn't want to be there, and believe me, he let me know he did not want to be there. He trusted me as we were going there. He knew that, hey, if Dad's in the room, even though this isn't a good thing, it will be for my best. And I think that's the kind of trust we have to bring with God. Is my kids don't wake up in the morning and go, oh man, are we going to eat today? Are you going to provide for us today? They just trust that we will provide for them.
They're what's for breakfast?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think God wants us to come with that kind of trust and faith. It's look, God, I might not know exactly how you're bringing it all together. Your kids don't know exactly how it all comes together.
Right.
But I'm trusting that you will give us what we need for today. Mm-hmm. I'm trusting that if you're saying no to something, it's for my best. And I think that's that faith like a child. And when Jesus says that, he's talking about humbling yourself, being, trusting God, and trusting that in God, all your needs will be met, and God will lead you where you need to go.
Yeah. And I think also to kind of tie our 2 thoughts together, it's the curiosity and the trust, those go together, when I think about my elementary high school. I changed high schools in 9th grade, and that was a little pivotal for me because new place, and kind of all that trust I'd built in this old system was kind of gone. And so I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to be that person. But when you trust the people around you, or you even here in church, right? If I didn't know you, I wouldn't be hey, Pastor Matt, why does God let bad things happen? I'd maybe send you an email, because emails kind of put that wall.
Allow for more of that trust.
Yeah, less to lose. But I think it's really true, and that's something that I one of the last things that we talked about in confirmation was I hope you never lose that curiosity.
It's huge.
And I hope that your faith continues to grow, and and change and mature, but also like know that asking questions is never a bad thing.
Yeah. It's huge.
So that's just something on the forefront of my mind is like, don't lose that curiosity. And sometimes we kind of talk ourselves into boxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we have such a robust theology, but there's still so much outside of that that we can't rationalize. And so.
Yeah, and I think, and we even created categories in our theology for that. That's why we have hidden versus revealed God. You know, because we know that there's aspects about God we're not going to understand.
Yeah.
Hidden God things. And when you're faced with the hidden God things, you got to move to the revealed God. So like when you don't understand what God is doing, God the Father, like look to Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that's always the best track. But yeah, I love that concept of faith like a child. And that, you know, I just want to highlight again, Kinsey said it a few times, I'll say it. It's not just the trust, but don't lose that inquisitive nature with your faith. I always like to say it like this. Faith is not about having it all figured out. Questions are going to come. Don't be afraid of the questions. Lean into the questions, because the questions are oftentimes a catalyst for growing in your faith. So with that, it's been fun for our second to last episode. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week for our final commute episode right here, Bethlehem Church Live. So click subscribe to the YouTube channel because we'll have more great content coming out, even though we're going to be closing out this season of the commute. We'll still have more great content for you coming. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week to wrap up not just this year in the commute, but the commute as a whole. Thanks for checking out this episode of The Commute. For more information on The Commute or to join the Commute Bible Reading Plan, simply download the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app or go to BethlehemChurchLive/The Commute.